Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about Chapter 4, Activity-Based Costing, and it's short for ABC. Um, this activity-based costing is based on Chapter 3, which is job costing. And the most important thing we understood on Chapter 3 is how to calculate predetermined overhead rate. If you still remember, the formula to calculate predetermined overhead rate is to use the total estimated overhead all through the period divided by total estimated allocation base. And then the allocation base must be a cost driver. And you have seen examples that use total labor hours or machine hours as allocation base to calculate predetermined overhead rate. And then we use this ratio to allocate the manufacturing overhead to the jobs and products during the year. However, Chapter 4 wants to redefine this or refine this cost system, because sometimes the overall predetermined overhead rate might not apply to individual activities, and then it will result some when some products are overcosted and some are undercosted, and the cost based on the overall overhead predetermined overhead rate might not reflect the true cost of the single units of products. This is an example that of a beer manufacturing firm. We have brewing activities, bottling activities, and packaging activities, and the cost drivers for these activities are different. So each department should have a separate overhead pool and may have a different allocation base. So in order to do activity-based costing, we also have these four steps as we did in Chapter 3. So first, the formula is the same. Predetermined overhead rate will be equal to total overhead divided by total estimated overhead divided by the total estimated allocation base. But now you have to do this formula to do this calculation to each activity individually. And then once you get a predetermined overhead rate, you allocate the overhead cost to the cost object using the same formula, predetermined overhead rate times the actual amount of allocation base. And once you once you allocate this different overhead to the different activities, then you add all these manufacturing overhead up, and then that is your total manufacturing overhead for that product. So this is an example. Donovan's Fine Furnishing manufactures upscale custom furniture and currently uses a plant-wide overhead rate based on direct labor hours. This is a plant-wide information, and it's the same as we used in Chapter 3. And this is a department information, which is just a, we list the examples from Chapter 3 so as you can compare the difference in these two approaches. Okay, so if you look at this information, departmental information, there are two departments, machining and finishing. And there's estimated overhead for each department and also estimated allocation base. And you can see the allocation base are different for these two departments. For machining, the main cost driver should be when the machine runs. So for the machining department, the allocation base is machine hours. But for the finishing department, the allocation base is direct labor hours, because we require more labors in the finishing department than in the machining department. And then these like allocation base will more align with the each activity and how the cost happen. Okay, and then here you can see the information for the two departments. So first, the question, okay, the first requirement is to calculate the plant-wide allocation rate. So we know that this is a plant-wide information, and we use total estimated overhead, which is 1,150,000 to divide by 25,000, and then that is the answer is is 46. And then this is the 46 is our plant-wide allocation rate. And then for each department, we're gonna calculate a predetermined overhead rate for each of the department. For the machining department, we see that the estimated overhead is 825,000, and divided by this allocation base is 13,750. And then the answer is, give me one sec. The answer is 60. $60 per machine hours, okay? And then this is per direct labor hours. As you can see here, that we use direct labor hours as allocation base. And for the finishing department, total manufacturing overhead is 325,000 divided by the estimated allocation base is 13,000. And then we have the allocation base, predetermined overhead rate is $25 per direct labor hours. Okay, so now that you can see that plant-wide allocation base is $46. However, the predetermined overhead rate are different for the two departments. Actually, you can see that $60 per machine hours in the machining department, but it's only $25 per direct labor hours in the finishing department. Okay, so the next job is to allocate the overhead based on single and plant-wide rate. So job 450, we can see here. Remember that for plant-wide information, we only use direct labor hours as a cost driver or allocation base. So when you calculate the job costs for each job, you only look at what you only look at the allocation base for the plant-wide. If you want to do a plant-wide allocation of manufacturing overhead. So here, what is the total direct labor hours for job 450? So is 1 direct labor hour for machining and 4 direct labor hour for finishing. So there's like a total of 5 direct labor hours. And then plant-wide allocation rate is 46. And then if we do a multiplication, then this is $220. And then for job 455, we can see 2 direct labors For machine department, 3 direct labor for finishing, and it's a total of 5 direct labor hours, and times 46 as well. And then overhead allocation is the same as $230. And the next requirement is we're gonna do a allocation, overhead allocation based on departmental rates. Okay, so for the machining department, for job 450, if you look back, requires 2 machine hours. Okay, so machine hours used by job is 2 machine hours, and then allocation base for machining department, as we calculate here, is $60. Okay, and then we know that the total overhead for machining department for job 450 is 130. And then for job 455, we have the same allocation, predetermined overhead rate. And then let's look back and see how many machine hours they have. Okay, it looks like they have 5 machine hours. So let's do it times 5, and then it's 300. Okay. And the finishing department, the departmental overhead rate is 25. And then direct labor hours used by job 455 is 2. Okay, and then times 2, and then here is same 25, but oh no, I got it wrong. Finishing department is 4 direct labor hours for job 450, and then finishing department for 455 is 3 direct labor hours. Okay, so times 3, and then this is 100, and this is 75. And then the total overhead allocation for job 450 is 220, which is a total of 120 and 100. And then the total allocation, total overhead allocation for job 450 is 375. Okay, so you can see that based on the plant-wide overhead rate, the two jobs have the same amount of MOH. However, based on the activities, they're actually different. So the question is, does the plant-wide overhead rate over or under cost either job? So it looks like it's actually the plant-wide overhead rate will over cost job 450, but under cost job 455. Okay. So activity-based costing. Here are some more information. Actually, we have covered these 4 steps before, and you can see that different kinds of activities in the manufacturing firm. And some examples, allocation base should be the cost driver. And then you can see that for material purchasing or handling, production, scheduling, quality inspections, photocopying, warranty services, all these departments have different kinds of cost drivers. So you have to use the cost drivers to allocate manufacturing overhead to reflect the real cost of that job. Okay. So this is another example, but I think it's very similar to the prior example. I don't want to cover this another time. So I posted all these notes on eCampus. So if you work on these examples and have any questions, you can let me know, and I'll give you the answer to these questions. Okay, so cost hierarchy is also a way to help you do activity-based costing. If you are working in a company as a managerial accountant, and you have to know that there are different levels of costs that we can classify. We have unit level, we have batch level, we have product level. And then if these activities are on different levels, you can differentiate these activities and see whether some of these activities can combine together and use the same overhead rate and to get your manufacturing overhead. So some examples that you can read. Activity-based management. So you use this activity-based management to make decisions to improve your profitability. And it can help you do pricing and product mix. You change the price for products, after identifying different total costs. Because some of the costs, they look the same as our prior example. They look the same for different, if you use the plant-wide allocation base, it looks the same for overhead, but actually they're different when you use activity-based costing. And then cutting costs, you have value-added activities. Customers are willing to pay because these activities add value. And there are also non-value-added activities or waste activities. And so what we do is to improve our value-added activities and eliminate or reduce non-value activities. This is an example. Which of the following would be considered a value-added activity? A, storage for raw materials. B, movement of parts to the production floor. C, sanding and finishing wood rockers. And D, janitorial services. Which one do you think? Yes, the answer is C, sanding and finishing wood rockers. Because this adds value to your finished products, okay? So if your the wood rockers are not sanding, you cannot sell it to the customers. So it makes a difference before and after that activity. So this activity is the value-added activities, and you should find a way to improve this activity to make it more efficient. And you have to eliminate, the cost for all these other kind of non-value-added activities. Okay. Also, planning and controlling and service merchandising companies also use activity-based costing to allocate operating costs amongst product and service line. Okay. So this is all for chapter 4. It's more straightforward and it's based on chapter 3. It's just a little bit in detail about the allocation of MOH. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.